after 1066, and this is the full extent of the claim that the Crown has against the people now. It's no better than that. No one's challenged it, because people were so oppressed through certain centuries, and people were so ignorant through other centuries that they didn't know they could. Because we've been robbed of our history right across this planet, of what really happened, in order to confuse us about where we are in space and time. Because just look at it this way. If I didn't know where I was in space and time at 35 minutes past 2 today, when I pointed the car, I wouldn't be sitting here now. Because I wouldn't have known how to get here. If we don't know where we are in space and time, let's just say that all of the stuff that you might have read or heard about 2012 is really an enormous mind control or flip. What if you found out, or what if you were presented with evidence that the date today is actually more likely to be 40 years from now, 2052? How could that happen? We've had 500 years of the Gregorian calendar, roughly. For the previous 1500, we had the British calendar, which started at 0, the year of Christ's apparent birth. 500 years ago, the Gregorian calendar was imposed, and then imposed right across the planet, and they started 0 AD at the 32nd birthday of the Christ figure. 32 years taken away. That means you look back in history, it all goes tits up as soon as you get into that era, into the Gregorian era. Then, you also take this into account. 360 is what, during ancient times, and they weren't the Dark Ages I'm talking about a more enlightened time in the past. But we'll come back to that later. 360 days in a year. So the Gregorian calendar added 5 days each year. If you add up the difference in time, you get 7.9 years. Add that on to 32, and you get 39.9. 40 rounded up. 2052. Take a second to ponder that one. Okay, why would this be so important? Why would it be? Well, it seems that there's evidence. When I say evidence, I'm talking about primary documents, manuscripts, gravestones, tombs, ruins, archaeological sites, and from my own experience, just by the Roman wall, there are rocks which have clearly been vitrified. Vitrification happens at temperatures normally in excess of 10,000 degrees C. Okay? The only known source of those temperatures would be from the sun, or a comet or a meteorite, or nuclear fusion, man-made. 562 AD corresponds with the date of the vitrification of rocks right across these islands. I've got photographs which I don't have the means to show you at the moment, but I may do in the second half after we have a break. But I've taken photographs of these rocks. They're all on freetheplanet.net. You can see everything that I'm talking about at that website. However, these rocks have been melted together, and you can see them. There are limestone rocks, huge slabs of limestone that show the signs of vitrification. And you can see joins, but there's no form to the joins, and it looks like, as is the way with limestone, that it's been decaying because of the erosion of the elements. And other rocks that were vitrified, they're still in the same vitrified form. They've got bubbles on them. And they're very, very strange colours as well, and they're not affected by the elements. And I've seen these rocks with my own eyes. And there are two researchers called Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett who've been writing about this subject and other related subjects for the best part of the last 3 decades. And I would highly recommend taking a look. And there's also an ancient history and cosmology section at Free the Planet. Now the reason I'm telling you this is because the nation that lived here in 562 AD, when it seems that the comet struck Britain and then struck Bolivia after Britain, creating a barren wasteland on the most bountiful islands in the Northern Hemisphere and the most advanced culture in the Northern Hemisphere, on the basis that they were famous throughout the world for 3 things. For having fearsome warriors who had no fear of death. That's because their divinity was bred into them. And there was a system of law that had actually been codified. Was talked about by one of the kings, King Hywel, one of the Welsh kings. This system of laws is far more advanced. There are some things that wouldn't apply, but it's far more advanced than anything that's any form of law that's been codified over the past 150, 200 years, if not longer. Every single man for his family was entitled to 5 acres of land, according to those laws. Water, fish, animals, they were all for the use of the people free of charge. Rocks, unused rocks could be used to build. Everybody had the right, every family had the right to 5 acres. There was no serfdom. It was the last free nation in the Northern Hemisphere left. It was the only one that wasn't subjugated by Rome. But we've been led to believe the opposite is true. That the ancient technologies were brought here by the Romans. They weren't. They were destroyed by the comet. As were a population that was estimated in evidence that exists in other parts of the world, not just here in Wales. But the population was estimated to be 10 million when the comet struck. There have been 3 Caesars who failed to conquer the British Isles, what was known as Britain. And the 2 islands were Albion and the original name of island, Escocia, I think I've got that right. And these 2 islands were known as Britain. And the first British king was around about 500 BC. The first British king, and again, this is all provable, was Brutus. Brutus founded Britain as a kingdom. But this kingdom developed these ancient laws, which meant that everybody was free. That there were 3 sovereigns recognized in law. Everyone was sovereign because they were divine. That was their birthright. But there were 3 sovereigns recognized to act for the people in law. The head of a clan, the king of a region, and the sovereign paramount, who normally became a military dictator in times of war or when invaders. There was a period of almost 40 solid consecutive years when 3 Roman emperors attempted to conquer Britain when they had nothing else left to conquer in the Northern Hemisphere. It was Julius Caesar, Caesar Augustus, and Caligula. And they all came here to do it, and all of them got sent back. Caesar wrote in his own memoirs, Julius Caesar wrote in his own memoirs, that when they came, the second time, they were repelled with such force, by such inferior numbers than they were, and suffered such dramatic casualties that they had to call for reinforcements. And when the reinforcements arrived in the form of ships full of legionnaires, the legionnaires had already had word from their comrades who had fallen or almost fallen on the beaches and said that there was something just unbeatable about the ancient Britons, and they refused to get off the ships on pain of death when they got back to Rome. Julius Caesar had mercy on them because he understood why they were doing this. Now, let's just take all of those things into account. And let's just also take into account the fact that following the failure of the Roman Empire to conquer these shores, there were around about 400 years of relative peace when those laws continued to be codified and the culture continued to be developed. And the divinity was known to be inherent to mankind. People knew that they had nothing to fear and that man was born free, and that man includes women because man was born of woman. And that the original trust in this material existence had to have been between consciousness, the masculine energy, which was given to creation, the feminine energy. That was the original trust. Universal community trust. Universal means of the universe. Community means common unity. Trust, that which no relationship can function without. It can dysfunction without trust, but it can't function. What I'm trying to express to you is that the universal community trust exists in the jurisdiction of natural law already. It's been established. It's just about to be recognized on an international level with treaties that are about to be signed. At the same time, we've managed, through, call it what you will, synchronicity is the best word, I think, we've managed to ascertain that rather than having to go through the rigmarole of creating our own infrastructure for the permanent credit facility, somebody on the other side of the world has had exactly the same idea and called it something else. They've called it a private international bank that doesn't engage in usury. Let me just clarify that. They don't loan any money at interest. They don't loan any money full stop. What they do is they accept promissory notes and bills of exchange from the customers who create their own line of credit for whatever purpose. But every customer has to make a pledge to the bank. And that pledge is that they will not do anything that is to the detriment of mankind or the planet with the money, and that whatever deposits they make, they have not been obtained through anything that is detrimental to mankind and the planet. So, the very first family trust is in the process. The very first beneficiary is a family trust. It's my family trust, and it's in the process of drawing its first line of credit with the bank. If this comes to pass, then we'll have a template to apply to every beneficiary within the trust. And every trustee of the UCT is now in a position to create lines of, or will be very soon in a position, once this credit is facilitated, to start acquiring land and infrastructure right across the planet. Because what we've decided to do, with peace at our hearts at all times, rather than lead some kind or attempt to conjure up some kind of resistance that may well turn into armed resistance or revolution or anything of that nature, we've decided to circumvent the possibility that that might be organised by the secret services or fomented by the usual banking interests who fomented every single revolution since the French Revolution, the House of Rothschild. It's all there for you to look. Don't take my word for any of this. It's all there if you haven't looked already. Everything comes back to the House of Rothschild, no matter what people tell you. But that's a different part of the exposition, as it were. In this situation that we find ourselves in now, we have decided that the best way to get the land back for the people is to reacquire it back. So we're going to buy, with their perfectly acceptable negotiable instruments, all of the land that's available. And we're going to make offers for everything that we think should be available to the people. And then whatever the crown and the moneyed aristocracy and everybody else who gained land because of the theft of the land from the people in the Doomsday Book and since, we're going to convene a grand jury to decide whether or not the Crown and the monarchy should forfeit all their lands and all of their ill-gotten gains on the basis that they've been in breach of that constitution for a good number of years, as has every single Crown agency. And the Parliament is now null and void as an institution, I have to tell you. Don't think that that means that the European Parliament